Old Testament passage is from Isaiah chapter 6. It's on page 487. Just going to read verses 8 through 10. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." He said, "Go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding. Be ever seeing, but never perceiving. Make the heart of this people calloused. Make their ears dull and close their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed." Today we're going to talk about uncomfortable situations. So I want to tell you a story. This isn't that uncomfortable of a thing now, but at the time it was quite uncomfortable. I think around 14. My parents were 4-H leaders, so I was in 4-H. And one thing that we did was we went to legislative breakfast in Albany, the state capital. We'd meet with assemblymen and senators, and we'd eat breakfast with them. I was a very shy 14-year-old, so usually I would not eat in this sort of setting. I'd be too nervous to be able to eat. But this breakfast buffet had sausage, all you could eat. So I got my plate of sausage links, and I sat down, and a state senator was talking and telling me, talking. Now, my mother had coached me on etiquette, and so you were careful to not push too hard on your fork when you get that. So you have to be careful of these things. Etiquette. What I did not realize was, if you're gently holding your sausage as you cut, it can escape. And so if you're cutting and slip, it can and you watch it. I was sitting next to an assemblyman, and so the sausage went in that direction. So I'm paying attention now. I'm listening. I'm nodding. And I'm looking under the table, on my lap, assemblyman's lap. So I'm looking. I'm nodding. I'm looking, and this is uncomfortable now. I can't find it anywhere. So soon afterwards, the assemblyman stands up. He needs to go. And I'm thinking, it's going to fall, and I'll just cover it up and take care of it. It never fell. He left, and I'm looking everywhere. There's no sausage anywhere. So enter the mind of Carl Green at 14. I thought, it went in his pocket. He stood up and he just left with it, and now he's got grease stains all over his pants. And so I was quite worried throughout the day that this guy's going to come back irate, that his pants are all stained because I shot a sausage on him while we're eating breakfast. See how that works? You're with me? He never came back. I'm still convinced that's where it went. I don't know. It was uncomfortable. That was an uncomfortable day. I lost the sausage. That's terrible. We've all had uncomfortable situations. Probably we all know an uncomfortable situation that we're in today. It's part of life. The New Testament passage that we look at today is a very uncomfortable situation. Story of Saul and Ananias. The lead in is Saul is on the road to Damascus. He has gotten authority from the chief priest to arrest anybody who believes in Christ. So this puts Saul in bad guy category. He has 135 miles to go. It's about a 6-day journey to get from Jerusalem to Damascus. And on the way, he's hit with a bright light. He stopped and dropped. And this is the exchange that happens. It's Acts chapter 9. It's page 777. And this is verse 5. This is the exchange that happens on the road. Saul hears a voice. "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." That's the setup to where we are. So Saul's kind of in an uncomfortable spot already. He is now blind after seeing this light. He's been told he's messing up badly. And now we pick up the story with Saul and Ananias. Verse 10. In Damascus, there was a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called to him in a vision, "Ananias." "Yes, Lord," he answered. The Lord told him, "Go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision, he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his sight." "Lord," Ananias answered, "I have heard many reports about this man, and all the harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. He has come here with authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name." But the Lord said to Ananias, "Go. This man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name." Then Ananias went to the house and entered it. Placing his hands on Saul, he said, "Brother Saul, the Lord, Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here, has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Immediately something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got up and was baptized, and after taking some food, regained his strength. Three things stand out to me that are very uncomfortable for Saul. First is, when he met Jesus, he also met his sin. When he met Jesus, he also met his sin. Jesus said, "Why are you persecuting me?" Very direct. And now think about this. I picture Saul now sitting in Damascus for 3 days. He's not eating, he's not drinking. In darkness, thinking about what he's done. Have you ever noticed how night can be a time in which stuff starts rolling through your mind and you just can't get out? Things you wish hadn't happened, things you wish you hadn't said, things you wish you hadn't done. Saul has 3 straight days of this. He's in blindness, he's dark, and now these things are just rolling over and over again. It's interesting how meeting Jesus can be uncomfortable because we have to confront what's going on in our lives. It's the first piece of being uncomfortable. The second thing is that Saul has moved from an authority to vulnerable. He cannot fix his own problem. Saul has headed to Damascus with authority to make people submit. He has gone with the paperwork to say, "I can haul you back to jail 135 miles away because I have the right to. I have the authority." And now, Saul is waiting for some ordinary guy named Ananias to show up so God can work. He's gone from being an authority, of controlling the destiny of his own life, to not leading his own life. The third piece of being uncomfortable is that life didn't become perfect after the turnaround. We know that from this passage, and also in Acts chapter 22, when Saul tells the story, he asks Jesus to forgive him. He makes Jesus the leader of his life. But everything is not better. Did you catch in verse 16 the promise that is here for Saul? This is the Lord speaking to Ananias. "I will show him how much he must suffer for my name." What a promise that is. I get the opportunity to suffer for the name. It's not a promise of deliverance from problems. And then, beyond that, Saul's going to be second-guessed the rest of his life. Right away, Ananias second-guesses him. "God, you've got the wrong man. This guy is a loser. He was a jerk. He is a jerk. He's going to be a jerk." Afterwards, people are going to keep second-guessing him. His faith's not real. It doesn't all turn around. Life is still hard. Life is still uncomfortable. What I realized from this story is that I expect deliverance. That's not what's offered here. Deliverance from his uncomfortable situations isn't what comes. He is offered purpose. In verse 15, Ananias is told that Saul will bring the message to kings, to people who have never heard the message. In many ways, rather than being delivered from uncomfortable situations, Saul is going to flourish. Flourish isn't the word that we drop all the time. I feel flourishing today. Usually we don't. Maybe some of you do. I don't know. So think of flourish with flower. So a flower is flourishing when it's thriving, when Webster's says growing luxuriantly. I like that one. Saul's promise is not that he's going to get out of problems, not that he's going to get out of uncomfortable situations, but he will have the opportunity to help people flourish. Something I want us to think about today. As a Christian, I am not promised that I will never face an uncomfortable situation. But what I am offered is the opportunity to help the people around me flourish. Let's illustrate this. These illustrations are fun. So I'm still taking my local history. I like reading and thinking about local history, and I still only know enough to be dangerous. I think about when this church was founded, 1833. Life was hard. Talk about uncomfortable situations. They're clearing trees, doing all sorts of hard work that's beyond me. I'm thinking the running water wasn't that great at that point in time. All sorts of challenges. And then in 1834, the great windstorm of Potter County. You remember that, Kemp? No? You were pretty young then. So, the great windstorm of 1834 pretty much wiped out Lymansville on the edge of what's now Coudersport. Lots of houses were damaged all over. Cattle were scattered and lost. And if I was a pioneer at that point, I would say, I guess I made a mistake. This is too many problems. What's the use of laying roots here? Let's keep moving. I don't want to be this uncomfortable. But that's not what most people said. Most people said, well, that was a bad day. They started over again because they were after more than just a short-term satisfaction of feeling comfortable. They were looking to start lives. They were looking to create new opportunities for their families so their families could flourish. I think that's what we're called to do, is to help the people around us to flourish. We get a picture of that from Ananias. So we had 3 things about Saul, now we're going to have 3 things about Ananias. And Ananias sets an example of how we can help other people flourish. Here's the first one. Expectancy without agenda. Expectancy without agenda. I'll explain this with a hypothetical situation. Say there was a boy named Carl with a brother who might have been named John, hypothetically. And it's Christmas, and we're having a great Christmas get-together with our parents and the 2 of us. And we're opening presents, and there's expectancy. Our parents are expecting, how are they going to respond when they see this gift that we gave them out of love? And we're opening, and it's great because we're opening it. Oh, this is so great, this is so wonderful. And so this time of expectancy goes awesome. And then when it's done, said boys exclaim, aren't there any more presents? It's kind of a dampening situation at this point. We've moved from expectancy to agenda. Expectancy of what great gifts are our parents blessing us with, to an agenda of how much loot can we get out of this deal. A big shift. And it's something that Ananias has to learn here. Ananias in verse 10, literally what he says is, here I am, Lord. And when we hear those words, "Here I am, Lord," for me it sends up a red flag, because I think, I've heard that before in the Bible. Genesis chapter 22. God speaks, and Abraham says, "Here I am." And God says, "You need to prepare to sacrifice the son that you love." I hear, "Here I am," and I think God speaking to Moses, and Moses saying, "Here I am." And God says, "I want you to go to Egypt where you do not want to go, to lead a people you do not want to lead." I hear, "Here I am." I think of Samuel in 1 Samuel 3. It takes him a few times to figure out who's speaking. And then he says, "Here I am." And God says, "Here's a horrible message that you need to share with Eli, who's taking care of you." Isaiah chapter 6 that we read this morning. "Here I am." It's a great passage. I remember singing it in college. There's a chorus that goes with it. "Here I am, Lord." It's awesome. But you read beyond that first verse, and it's, the people aren't going to listen to you. You're to bring this message, but if anything, the people are only going to have hardened hearts. So when Ananias says, "Here I am," he better be ready to get his agenda set on the shelf. God says, "I'm glad you're there. Here's your mission. Go see Saul." And how does Ananias respond? Not so much. God, he's a jerk. Remember? You should know this. Jerk category, not jerk. He's in the jerk category. We're not going there. Ananias has an agenda. Ananias has this plan of, this is how God should work. This is how God can use me in a good way. Rather than just being expectant of, "God, I want to do what you want me to do." And think about that in life. How are we filled with agenda rather than expectancy? When we sense God nudging us, we're pretty excited if it means a raise at work, maybe an award, or even if friends of ours are going to come to church, or things, all sorts of things, in which if they are good in our eyes, I'm all about that, God. But maybe expectancy also brings in when God nudges us to face sin in our lives, we should be ready to move. When God nudges us to deal with strained relationships or messy situations, we need to set our agenda aside. Ananias learned to be expectant without agenda. He also learned to see what God sees. I was talking about Ananias' response to Saul, or to God. And he said, "Not that guy, God. I've heard about him. You know about him." You notice that God doesn't tell him that's not true. He's just got a bad rap. He hasn't been that bad. God doesn't say that. God does say, "I see opportunity. He is my chosen vessel." He's a child of God. What Ananias was looking at was the problems. And we can be consumed by looking at only the problems. But God saw the opportunity of Saul coming to Christ and turning the world upside down. How often is it that we get so focused on the problem of a situation that we lose sight of the opportunity? Maybe a relationship issue, a financial issue, a legal issue. Those are real problems that we need to deal with. But they're also opportunities. Opportunities to help people flourish. Of helping people to realize that God is at work. That brings us to the last piece of flourishing. Behavior modification does not cut it. So with that cliche, you can tell I've been to enough parenting seminars and read enough parenting books that behavior modification is not enough. It's a heart issue. You're after the heart, not just getting somebody to change their behavior. There's an old story about a mom driving her daughter's in the back seat, and the girl keeps like loosening the seatbelt and clasping herself up against the window to look out. And she says, sit down, sit down, sit down. So they go through this struggle of getting her to sit down, and finally the mom says, you're going to have these consequences if you don't just sit down. So finally she sits, and she's quiet, she's doing what she's supposed to. The mom says, thank you, Susie, for sitting down and obeying. And Susie says, I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside. You know, there's a difference between our heart being changed and just changing our behavior. We get the sense that Ananias had a heart change. In verse 17, when Ananias goes to speak with Saul, Ananias says, Brother Saul. He's not just going through the motions. He's not just going there and getting it done and whatever. He calls this man who's done horrible things, Brother Saul. In chapter 22 of Acts, we get a little bit more of the story that Saul tells. And Saul says, Ananias led him to ask for forgiveness of Jesus Christ. Ananias led him to ask Jesus to be leader of his life. Ananias moved from just wanting to get rid of this guy to caring about him for real. You know, we can go through a lot of emotions. We can put on a smiley face and do nice things for people and hate them. There needs to be a heart change. That can really only come from God. This morning, I want to invite you to flourish. Maybe you and I are in a place in life similar to Saul. Maybe we've met Christ, and at the same time we've been confronted with our sin. Ask for forgiveness. Maybe like Saul, we have met Christ, but life feels out of control. Ask Jesus to be our leader. Maybe like Saul, it feels like we suffer too much. Remember that we have the privilege, the opportunity to help those around us to flourish. Of being expectant without agenda, of seeing what God sees, of having a changed heart. When I think about the legacy that I hope to leave with my kids, my nieces and nephews, with the people of this community who might happen to remember me in years to come, I hope the legacy that I leave is not one of, boy, he was a really comfortable guy. He lived a comfortable life. I hope the legacy that I leave, I don't know what it was, but that guy helped me flourish. I don't know what it was, but that guy brought something out in me that was just different.
Sure.
Each one of us has an invitation to flourish, to help those around us to flourish. Alan has an invitation to flourish. Kevin has an invitation to flourish. Mike has an invitation to flourish. Emily has an invitation to flourish. Each one of us has an invitation to flourish in our own lives and the lives of those around us. Fortunately for you, it's late enough. I'm not going to keep going around the room and saying names to embarrass you. I've only embarrassed a few people. for us to flourish. Don't miss it.